Assalamu alaikum, guys. Welcome to this episode of Freshly Grounded. This episode is with brother Mansoor Danish. So, Mansoor, as you guys know, for the last few months, we've partnered up with the Islamic Open University. Sorry, that was the previous name. With the International Open University. And in our relationship with International University, we've been telling you guys about the amazing courses that they've been doing, and basically how you can get a degree by studying online at home, and you can get a degree or a master's in various different secular subjects, like education, for example. If, for example, you want to be a teacher, you can get an education degree or a master's through IOU. You can study at your own home, study wherever you want, whenever you want, basically. You have complete freedom, but also you get a degree at the end of it, and it's taught by Muslims. And so it's Islamicized education, which means that the degrees that you do are taught in a way that respect your faith, and also they're taught in a way that facilitate your faith as well. And so they also have Arabic courses and Islamic courses, but it's really interesting. But anyway, if you want to check out, if you want to find out more about IOU, I'll leave a link in the bio. You can go to iou.edu.gm/FG. But Mansoor is, he was the acting head of department of business at IOU, and I spoke to the guys at IOU, and I thought, look, we've seen a lot of interest in you guys being interested and wanting to know more about IOU. So it'd be cool if we got someone who actually works there, head of a department, to come in and have a chat with us. And so we had Mansoor come in, and we spoke about some really interesting things. We kind of first we're just chopping up about negotiation and stuff, and I spoke about a few different bits. But what was really interesting is when we got into the discussion about body language and how important body language is. So I think you guys will enjoy this one. I really enjoyed having a chat with Mansoor. Really interesting character, great guy, and knows a lot about kind of body language and the importance of it, especially in business and negotiation. So enjoy this episode. It's episode 369 of Freshly Grounded, and I'll see you on the other side. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you doing? Are you well?
Alhamdulillah. How about you?
Alhamdulillah, very well. So we were introduced by the brothers at IOU, and I'm very intrigued to get into some of the stuff that you're doing there. But I think the thing that has intrigued me the most when reading up on your bio and stuff was the stuff about negotiation.
Yeah.
Because there was about a year ago, I became really obsessed with the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which is this FBI agent who just like breaks down negotiation in like the business sense. And so I was intrigued and excited to speak to you about your take on things. And actually, I think like when I read that book, the thing that it kind of made me realize is that in everyday life, you're constantly negotiating.
True.
In everything that you do, and it's not just a business thing. And so when I learned about that, it made me realize that you have to know the art of negotiation, otherwise you're always kind of going to kind of be on the bottom end, or kind of in less powerful of a position. So have you seen negotiation play a large role in your life outside of business? I know business is like your speciality, but have you seen it play a part outside of that?
I mean, let's first start off with what you just said. Negotiation is something which you have in your personal life as well. And you're negotiating right from the time you're an infant, right? Isn't it? So let's talk about a person, a child who's a toddler, let's say. At a toddler age also, they are negotiating with the parents, or the parents are negotiating with them. As to, if you want something, you need to, sort out certain things, or you need to make sure that you're doing your work, or you're managing your studies properly. So there's a constant negotiation that is being done. Maybe not in a formal setup, but there are these qualities of negotiation which are there in all of us. We all have those negotiation traits. And with me as well, I mean, we've all been negotiating at different point of time in our life. So yeah, that has always been there, whether it is personal life or professional life.
A huge part of it is like, rather than business, I would kind of categorize negotiation more in the psychology realm, right? What made you interested into understanding in negotiating?
I mean, negotiation is all about psychology, and leadership is all about studying people, leading people, having followers, and how would you follow? And how would you make your followers follow and meet the certain goals and visions that you have? In order to do that, you need to understand the psychology of your people. So I would understand that psychology as a subject is not only meant for one group of people, it's linked to so many aspects of our life. I mean, look at a medical doctor. When he's sitting with his patient, he needs to also understand psychology, because when he's talking to his patient, there are a lot of things which the patient may not be sharing with him, but he'll be getting the clues from the conversation he's having. Likewise, in business world, one of the things that we learned basic was that when we talk of an organization is made out of groups, and groups are made out of people, and people have psychology, which you need to understand. So to understand the psychology of the organization, you need to understand the group psychology, and you need to understand the psychology of people. So yes, psychology is part of our regular life, and I think I would understand it's a compulsory subject or a compulsory topic that everyone must familiarize with themselves with, if they wish to succeed in their professional life.
It's interesting you give the example of the doctor, because when I went to the doctors recently, I met a doctor called Dr. Fawzi Khatranji, and I actually ended up interviewing him on the podcast. And one of the things that I loved about my initial consultation with him when I went to visit him at the hospital was that he broke it down from a psychology perspective as well. And he said that there's a clear link between your psychology, your mind and your body. And he actually studied psychology before he studied medicine. And so that's why he kind of had that touch. And it made me think to myself, I wish more doctors would. It was in my 30 years of life, and in 30 years of going, back and forth to the doctors for various different things. It's the first time a medical doctor came to me from the angle of psychology as well as medicine and body, and I found that really interesting.
You see, even in the business administration world, I have a background in business administration, and I can tell you that one of the topics that was taught to us was organizational behavior. And organizational behavior is all about human behavior. And what is human behavior? That's psychology, isn't it? And so you are studying human behavior in all aspects of your life, whether it is at a business level or even at a medicine level, and I talk about medicine because I come from a family where we have 5 generations of medical doctors. My father's an orthopedic surgeon, my brother's an ENT surgeon.
Amazing.
So, mashallah. So
you're the black sheep.
I am the black sheep of the family, absolutely. Yeah, I am the black sheep. I manage the finances.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. Well, you've done an incredible job yourself, because you're head of department of business administration, or head of department of business?
I was the head of the department of the business administration at one point at the IOU.
Okay.
But currently, I am the director for the student affairs office.
Okay.
So the entire student affairs, they fall on my shoulder. Well, alhamdulillah.
What does that involve?
Well, the student affairs typically involves your interactions with the students. So my department are the interface. The students get in touch with us. They have any student queries. It's like a help desk.
Fine.
So under our student affairs, we have an help desk. We have student affairs support team. We have a chat desk. We have an email coordinators. So every point of contact with the student goes through with my department.
How challenging is it dealing with or running a university that's online? My experience with university has obviously always been physical, and I think back to how important our seminars were. So we had the lectures, and then we'd have weekly seminars where it was much smaller circles. We'd be with like a PhD student. We could speak to them about what's going on in our lectures, or we used to be assigned a personal tutor, and that person was like a lecturer, and we would have, what was it called, like personal tutor time, like once a month, so we'd have like one-on-one with them. And I think all of those little ingredients made university, or the education side of university, a little bit easier. What's it like for an online university like IOU? Before
I answer that, I want to understand vaguely, when did you hear about IOU for the first time? Do you recall?
Do you know what? I heard about IOU many years ago. I can't remember, many years ago. But I saw it through Dr. Bilal Phillips' Instagram, social media.
So, I started working with the IOU in 2014. So, mashallah, I've completed over 10 years with the IOU. And prior to that, I was a student at the IOU.
Wow.
So, I started off with my BA in Islamic Studies with them. I did a couple of diploma courses there as well on Islamic studies. So my association with an online setup goes back to 2010 or 2012. So that's how old I have been with my association with online learning. And 2014, when I started working in an online setup, it was challenging because back then I was in India. And you know how the Eastern culture is, isn't it? So if you're sitting at home, you can't be working.
Yeah.
You need to be going out. So you can try convincing people that you're working, but they would still say, okay, you're working online, but what do you do for work? You know, what do you do to earn? So it was very difficult to make people understand. And I think the game changed post-COVID, because during COVID, everyone realized that, yes, you can work out of home.
Yeah.
So as far as working online has been concerned, or studying online has been concerned, either if I speak from the student's perspective, as a student, I found it really convenient for myself. I already had a six years experience, and then I took a break to do my MBA studies. So when I joined the IOU, I had relatively free time in my hand because I'd taken off from my work. The only thing I was doing was an MBA. So I relatively found it easy to study online because it was very flexible. I could manage my studies. I could plan out my studies over the week. And then we used to have these weekly sessions with the tutor. Fine. So if you have any queries, get in touch with your tutor directly. And of course, the biggest advantage was you were studying with teachers who were from Medina University, like Dr. Bilal Phillips, Dr. Anwar Sahib. At that point of time, you could only think of going to Medina University. And if you can't make it to Medina University, you didn't have a second option. So for me, I think that was one of the biggest advantage at that point of time, that the online setup gave me that flexibility. And I think it's been pretty easy for me in that sense, because it's a global village now. And what makes us global village? It's the fact that we're connected through the net, through the internet. So studying online today is pretty, I think, an in thing now. I see all the major universities now have an online program as well.
I think the thing that makes IOU special, that I kind of really take to, is the Islamic side of it. I was not even just the Islamic side, but the fact that you're teaching secular studies, you're getting a secular degree, you know, a BA or a master's in business, in psychology, but it's taught by Muslims. Yeah. The reason I find that so interesting is, recently I was having a conversation with a friend, and he was telling me about one of his friends was studying one of the social sciences in university, and in the very first lecture, the lecturer basically came out and like said, if anyone here believes in God, you might as well believe in like fairy tales and stuff like that. And he just like, first lecture, he started mocking God. And I thought, what a horrible environment to be in, where your beliefs aren't even respected, let alone somebody taking them into account. They're not even respected. It's like there's like an anti-God
just nullifying, just nullifying it.
Yeah, well, mocking it as well. Yeah. So it is getting more and more like that. And so to know that if somebody really feels like they don't want to get into university, whether it's because of student finance costs, or if it's because of the environment, the free mixing and things like that, that there's actually a viable solution for them to still get their secular degree. So I found that interesting. What kind of students are you generally getting at the university?
Well, I mean, first to take the points that you've rightly mentioned, that, you know, one of the biggest advantages that you're coming to a university like IOU, you're not only learning secular knowledge, but you're learning it from an Islamic perspective. Not only do you have Islamic teachers teaching you, they're also teaching it to you from an Islamic perspective. And that really makes the difference, because you can be studying psychology, you could be studying business administration. I mean, I have taught a lot of courses under business administration over there. My courses on organizational behavior or business communication or service marketing. These are conventional topics which I have studied in a conventional college myself. But I've taught the same courses, giving an Islamic perspective to them as well. So when we talk about, for example, advertisements, we teach about what kind of advertisements you can do. I mean, you're from that world also, you know, closely related to it. But there's an Islamic side to it as well, because you could be doing an advertisement which could be lacking ethics from an Islamic perspective. We touch upon all of these topics.
That's so powerful, isn't it?
So that's one of the biggest advantages, that, you know, you're learning knowledge of the deen, and you're learning the knowledge of the dunya, which will also benefit you in the akhirah. Because if you start implementing it, it becomes a means of ibadah, because you're doing it for the sake of Allah, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that, I think, is one of the most important thing. Now, coming to your question about the kind of student mix we have, I think we've got students across 200 countries, mashallah. Wow. So that's how strong our presence is. We've got students from Australia, from New Zealand, from Europe, Russia. In fact, we have a separate Islamic studies program in the Russian language. We have a separate Islamic studies program in Bahasa for the Indonesian audience. So, I mean, because of the demand. So we're very well spread out. And of course, we are very largely present in the African continent as well, apart from the European continent and the West. So as far as the student mix is concerned, in terms of nationality or region where they come from, they're coming across the globe. Now, in terms of the age group, you'll be surprised to know that we deal, and since I'm in the help desk, now I come to know more about the student backgrounds and the demographics. The students who are 60 plus, 65 plus, who are studying Islamic studies. There are people who are police officers in US who are studying Islamic studies. And they're coming from different communities. So it's not that we only have Muslim students. We have people from other communities as well who are coming and studying Islam. So that's the kind of mix we have. It's extremely diverse in that sense. And most importantly, if you watch the video of Dr. Bilal on the 7 habits of the highly successful Muslim, and he points out about one of the things that IOU focuses on is gender equality. We promote in our university women education as well. So you will find that there are a lot of sisters who are joining the IOU, because in some countries, because of the free mixing which is there, many sisters are not comfortable to go to the secular setup and study over there. But that's not with the IOU. And being an accredited universities, your degrees are also accredited.
How do you get accredited as an online university?
Well, we are accredited in Naka, which is in Gambia. So that is where our accreditation is. And we follow the regular process. Okay. We have a headquarter in Gambia. So that's how we've got ourselves accredited.
But that same degree is recognized like anywhere in the world?
Well, I know that the Pakistan's HEC has started recognizing the degree.
Okay.
We just came to know about that recently. I've got students in US who used to write to me when I was a faculty also, and the head of the department, to give them letter of reference because they wanted to pursue their masters, and their degree were getting recognized in the universities there in US. Okay, so it is totally a university's call over there, you know. Once they see your credits, they see the courses that you've studied, the subject that you've studied, they start, you know, recognizing it and accepting it. But again, it would vary from country to country.
Fine.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I want to go back to the topic of negotiation.
Yeah, we're not negotiating.
Yeah. I want to go back to that topic because I'm really interested in it. I've been going knee deep in it over the past couple of years. So I want to know some of the best practices of negotiation in a business sense. Some do's and don'ts that you've come across. Some really bad do's that you've seen, bad don'ts that you've seen in your experience, and then some like really important things that a person should do when it comes to negotiating when you're negotiating over a business deal, for example. For added context, we have Fawaz here as well, and Fawaz on the side, he buys and sells cars. He's a car salesman, so for negotiating, he's like on the ground when it comes to negotiations, which is interesting.
Sure. See, negotiation for me requires 2 most important qualities. The first is the quality of being assertive. And second is the quality of cooperation. Because when you're negotiating, it's always 2 or more people. Okay, so let's take a setup like this, like the 2 of us are sitting across the table and we are trying to negotiate. So there has to be a level of cooperation. You and me, we cannot come in with our own respective biases and not see eye to eye with each other. Then that's not a negotiation. That's the end of the conversation. So 2 important parameters for me to judge good negotiation or bad negotiation is assertiveness and cooperation. Now I'm going to go through each of them separately. You could be high on assertiveness. So you want to say something?
No.
Yeah.
I have asthma.
Okay.
So just try to take a deep breath there.
May Allah grant you shafa. So you could be high on assertive and you can be very high on cooperation. And that's like the ideal situation, that the person is extremely assertive. When I say high assertiveness, I am linking assertiveness with your level of confidence when you're negotiating. All right. So when 2 people are negotiating with each other, and if they're assertive, as in they're confident about their knowledge, you know, they have the knowledge about the content that they're talking. For example, we're talking about the car, right? You're dealing in cars. And if you're dealing with a client, if you have all the background knowledge, you know what his requirements are. You know that he also has a good background knowledge about cars. So when you sit down to negotiate with him, you do your homework. You do your preparation. So the first stage is preparation. Preparation will give you some level of confidence.
Which gives you assertiveness.
Assertiveness will come with other qualities as well.
Yeah.
So you would require to be a good communicator as well. And to be a good communicator, you need to use both verbal and non-verbal communication. We can touch upon that. That's my favorite topic, by the way, communication,
Okay.
you know.
Amazing.
When we talk of leadership, you know, like we were discussing about leadership the other day, leadership is all about communication, negotiation, all of these. So coming back to negotiation, so a person is highly assertive, and then he's also cooperating, which means he's not only about pushing his own agenda in that negotiation. I'm ready to give you value as well. That's what negotiation is all about. That the person, the negotiator, knows that I have to make him feel that he's also got a good deal. And I should also feel that I've got a good deal. So when you're high on assertiveness and high on cooperation, you reach a stage of collaboration. That's when you are able to use your creativity. And that's the ideal stage for negotiation. The extreme opposite of that would be when you're low on assertiveness and you're low on cooperation, which means you lack knowledge, you haven't prepared well for yourself. And so you're trying to do what? Avoid that situation. And you'll therefore not cooperate with the person. So that is an avoidance state. And then we look at the other extremes which are there. That you could be extremely assertive and confident. You would have all the knowledge, but it's all about yourself. You're not concerned about the other person.
Is that the most common?
That's the dominating nature. That many people end up in negotiating, dominating. Because they feel that negotiation is all about me trying to prove that I'm better than you.
Right.
And when we try to do that, and in fact, I would say that most negotiations happen this way, because people may have the knowledge about the product that they're dealing in, but they are not willing to cooperate because they feel if I'm going to give him an inch, he'll ask for a yard. So to protect the yard, they avoid the inch. And that's not how negotiation happens. So we're looking at the third stage now, where you're high on assertive and low on cooperation. This is a stage where you become dominating, you become competing in nature. You feel that the other person is your competitor. But negotiation is not about competitor. You're dealing with your clients. They could be your suppliers with whom you're negotiating. The other extreme to domination is accommodative, where you're not assertive, but you're very cooperative, you know, like the country club style. You know, you're always trying to make the other person happy. You know, somebody comes and says, oh, you know what, I want this deal. I can't pay you more than this. You know what, if I pay you more than this, I'll have nothing to eat at home tonight. So the person's heart melts and he says, okay, please go ahead, take this car. All right. Now, these are, I mean, the person could be bluffing. But this is what happens in negotiation, that one party might try to bluff the other to see whether the other person is accommodating in nature. Is he competing in nature? Is he dominating in nature? You can't figure it out in one go. It happens through conversation. And that's why negotiation is not about getting into the topic straight away. It's about building relationship. When I talk to you, I build relationship. When I build relationship, I understand your psychology. We're talking psychology again. We're talking about mindset again. To study your values, to study your beliefs, to study your culture. Now, once that happens, when the relationship is built, there's a tendency to cooperate as well. Because now I want to see you happy as well. I also want you to be happy with the deal. So we looked at 4 things now. We've looked at the most ideal situation, which is to collaborate, where you're highly assertive and highly cooperative. We've looked at the other extreme, which is to avoid. And then the other 2 extremes on the quadrant is to be competitive, or not competitive, but rather to be competing and dominating, and the other extreme being accommodative. In between all of this is a compromise, where you're not very assertive, but you're also cooperating. This is a compromise situation. This is an ideal situation. If nothing works out, let's do a compromise. The best, of course, is to use creativity. And that happens when you are highly assertive and highly collaborating.
Yeah, I imagine a big part of it is actually finding out what the person actually wants as well. Because if, for example, the person wants a lower price, but you can keep the price the same, but you can just give them more value, perhaps they'll be fine with that, right? So I guess it's like trying to get to the crux of what it is that they want. Do they actually want a lower price, or are they not valuing what?
Not necessary, Faisal. No, they could tell you very clearly. I mean, for example, you might be in the procurement team, and your marketing team can clearly tell you that, you know what, we require the following events to be organized, and we would like you to book the following hotel, but this is our budget. Now what are you going to do? The marketing team wants all the values, but they're not ready to give you the budget to go ahead and do the deal. So as a procurement team, when you have to go out and negotiate, you have your hands tied. You know that the marketing team has given you a stiff budget, a tight budget. You can't cross the budget. but at the same time, they want value. Now, when you sit down with the other team, the supplier wants more price. He might be willing to give you the value, but he wants more price. So there will always be that conflict which needs to be resolved. And that's where negotiation comes in. And that skill of negotiation, as I mentioned to you, there's a lot to it. There are stages to negotiation. You need to know when to walk away from a negotiation. You need to know when you need to draw a line and feel that my best alternative is to go with something else. So then you need to be prepared before a negotiation with your next alternatives. That's important. I mean, for example, if you're going out to buy a car because you're dealing in car business and you're doing some bargaining with the supplier who's going to provide you the car, but you should be aware of what the market rates is or what someone else is ready to offer you at. So that you know that if this negotiation is going to go beyond this price, that's my walk away. I need to now go to my partner or the best alternative to the current agreement. So we call it partner negotiation.
How often does like ego play a part in negotiating? Because I had a scenario the other day where my ego came up, and I feel like the other party's ego came up. I'll tell you what happened. So, I was ordering something, and the value of this, I'm trying to think of how I can say it with keeping it fairly anonymous, right? It's tough. But
product.
So it was a product.
Product.
Yeah, it was a product that had to be like made, and I know like in the UK and things like that, I can get it like I know the price I can get it for, and these guys were charging like double or triple. And so what happened is they said something to me like, okay, it's 425, per product. I was getting two, so it would be, whatever is that, 850, right? So I said, look, I'll do 400 like per product, right? So 25 dirhams off. They were like, no, this is our last price. And so they had this, so I was like, well, that's the most I could do. So like, I'm not interested. And so I walked away from it, right? And the reason I walked away is because I was just thinking to myself, first of all, I wasn't that interested anyway, because the price was high as it is. I wasn't like that, like involved. Like I wasn't that desperate for it because I was like, this is a ridiculous price. So I just thought, let me just try and like see how I can get it down. But I did a really bad job. But the reason my ego kind of got involved, because I was just thinking, these guys are going to walk away from 800 dirhams for something that's overpriced as it is. But for the sake of speed, I just wanted to get the thing.
Sure.
And I could afford it. So I was like, you know what, I don't mind getting it. But they walk away from 800 dirhams for 50 dirhams, right? In pounds, you're talking 12 pounds, right? So in pounds, what's 800 dirhams in pounds? Is like almost 200 pounds, right? They walk away from 200 pounds for 12 pounds. And so I couldn't get my head around why they were being so stubborn over 12 pounds when they're making such a large profit on this minuscule thing, right? And then when I said I'm not interested, they were like, okay, fine. Like, and then they walked away. And so we both kind of had this ego of like, I'm like, look, I'm not paying you any more than this because that's ridiculous. And they were like, well, this is our final price, and that's it. I just couldn't get my head over the fact that they walked away from 800 dirhams, which is crazy profit for the product.
What was the tone of communication when the negotiation was happening? Was it face-to-face communication or audio communication? Or
At the time, it was on text.
It was purely text.
No, I think it started in person.
Okay.
It started in person. And then we said we'll like have a chat when like final stuff's done. So that bit was on text.
Yeah. No, that's important for me to know.
Okay.
Because you see, when we talk about negotiation, it's about communication, right? Yeah. We are communicating our ideas, expectations.
But when somebody's hard and fast, like, no, this is our final price. How do you just walk away from that then? Because they're being...
You need to understand one thing, Faisal, here. It's not just you who are sitting there on the negotiation table with all your preparation, with all your batna, with all your walkaway, that this is going to be my walkaway. I'm not going to do any further agreement after this. Even he's coming with his preparation. So this is where we need to now be aware not only about ourselves, but about the person with whom we are negotiating. That he is also coming prepared. Probably he also has a walk away. Now, when you talk about what could be the reason why he did that, that only he can explain best, because I'm not there in that situation or scenario to see the kind of communication that was taking place. But could that be ego? Yes. Most of the negotiation is going to fail because of ego. because both parties would not want to let go of what they want. And that's exactly what I said. It's the aspect of cooperation.
How do you establish cooperation or the removal of ego early on in the discussion?
It is when you start the conversation, you start with a smile, you welcome the person warmly, you start knowing the person, you talk about here and there topics, you don't go directly into the negotiation.
I see.
All right, because if you go directly into negotiation, then you are wanting a transactional relationship. That look, see, negotiation is normally done, but you want to build relationships. Now, I'm assuming that this particular product which you wanted to buy was like a one-off thing, right?
Yeah.
I buy it this time, you're probably not going to buy it anymore from him again.
Yeah.
All right, so this is more of a transactional thing. All right, but when you have built a relationship, and that happens through communication, when you talk to the person, you see when people talk, they say, how have you been doing today? Just to try and give a good feeling to the person. We receive so many calls these days from credit cards and so many other organizations calling us up for their products. What is our response to them? Please don't call me right now, I'm busy.
Yeah.
We hang up. If that is the kind of approach we have, then the other person is going to go into a shell. So it could be that when you come across as a very hard-hitting person in the negotiation, the other person goes into the defense mode. All right? It could be vice versa as well. Perhaps they came across very strong, so you went into a defensive mode. And so you decided that, look, this is going to be my walkaway as well. I'm also not going to give you an inch. All right? So that happens. It happens because we are not ready to understand each other in the table. All right? And we need to show the value to the other person. So we need to make the other person understand that, look, if I'm going to buy this product from you, I've got a podcast studio and I'm going to showcase that product, and you will have more clients who are going to come to you. So now you're showing him value. I'm just giving you an example. It could be anything else, It could be like the car that he is dealing in. So he could also be trying to, show value to the other person. And that is important, that you show value to the other person. It's not about the value which I alone want. I need to speak his language. I need to show him what I'm going to give him. How will he benefit in this negotiation agreement, apart from the price that he's getting? We often reduce it just to the price. It's not only about the money at the end. We need to talk about beyond money. And that's how it works.
One of the most beneficial things I read in Never Split the Difference was when Chris Voss said, one of the most powerful things that you can do in a negotiation is to ask the person you're negotiating with to solve your problem. So let's say, for example, I say, look, my budget's 400, And he's like, where's 430? By asking him, okay, look, this is my situation. If you were in my shoes, how would you solve this issue? What it basically makes them do, he was saying, is they can then empathize with you. They can put themselves in your shoes and say, okay, fine. If I was in a position where I only had this, how would I provide him a solution? So you're basically asking them to provide you a solution for your situation. And he said often that works. And I found that quite interesting.
I give you an example from a field where you are in content development.
Yeah.
If I come to you and I tell you that, I need your services for 1 year, all right, and we have certain terms, and you give me a quotation, and what is the common thing that I'm going to do after that, after I receive your quotation? I'm going to go to 10 other suppliers and see what quotations they have. And then I'm going to sit down and bargain with you. It's because you've given me a quotation, but you've not shown me the value. Many people are just interested with the work. They're ready to pay the money, because many a time, the ones who sit down on the negotiation table are not the owner of the finances. The finances belongs to someone else. They're sitting there just to do the negotiation. The budget belongs to someone else. The owner of budget is someone else. So there is therefore a tendency to just try and get a deal done, or let the deal go if it doesn't meet the price point. Because if my marketing team says, this is my budget, fine, okay. If you don't want to give it to me, I'm going to go to someone else, because I know my marketing team is not going to accept. But if I am able to identify the value that you will bring on the table, what is the value that you're going to give me if I go with you? How are you going to be different from all the other content developers which are out there? So there are others who are charging less than you, and perhaps they are giving better quality. So can you show me what quality can you bring on the table? What value you can bring on the table? So I know of a company which is into similar business here in the UAE. I wouldn't name them. So whenever this particular company, with whom I was just doing a negotiation workshop recently, a pharmaceutical company, they said whenever we ask them to share with us their quotes are always high, and they're always talking about doing things beyond what we have asked them for. Now that creates a problem, because when we want to do an apple-to-apple comparison, we would like to see how much are you going to charge for the task that I want you to do. All right? But they're always trying to show value, and they tell me that what we do is we realize that the kind of content that they share with us as their examples, they're very high quality stuff. So even though they're asking for a higher price, I know where they're coming from. So it's all about showing the value that you can bring on the table. Mm-hmm. Once you're able to show that value, then negotiation can proceed accordingly. So I think it's the money factor which should be kept aside. So when we sit down to negotiate, we should say, let's keep the money aside for the time being. We'll come to the finances later. Let's talk about the value and the benefits. It's always about value benefit. The cost comes in later. Once I'm convinced about the value I'm getting or the benefit that you are getting, then it becomes easier to close the deal, because now money becomes much more easier to talk about. Because I know what will I lose in terms of my value, or what benefit I'll lose.
Yeah. But if you bring money into discussion too soon, you're kind of clouded by that in the whole discussion.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, the moment you're going to talk about money and you will tell me that, look, I can't reduce this money further. This is my last price. Now it becomes extremely difficult for me to know how I'm going to proceed from here.
Sure.
Because what will keep playing in my mind is that whatever value is going to show me, it's the money where the problem will lie.
Blocker, yeah.
So I'm not interested now to see the value anymore. So it's important that we bring the value and benefits first on the table. And let's talk about the price later. We also let them know that we are ready to customize. You see, customer is the king today. So you need to let them know that, well, we are ready to customize it to your budget. You let us know what your budget is. Don't ask me my quotes. My quotes will be dependent upon your budget and your requirement. So you share with me your requirement and you share with me your budget, so that I can prepare a customized product for you, or a customized content for you, or a customized quotation for you.
You spoke earlier about verbal and non-verbal communication, and how important that is. How should a person be displaying themselves in these situations? But I suppose even in business in general, I know you do a lot of talks on leadership. So, and look, I know non-verbal communication is huge, but I want to get an understanding from you, I suppose, like just how huge it is, and some kind of like hacks or tips on non-verbal communication.
So you want to know how big it is? Let's give it a number. All right. So there's a very famous model called the Albert Mehrabia model.
Okay.
Albert Mehrabia model says that there are three aspects to a communication. When you're communicating, you're using three things to communicate. You're using words, you're using tonality of your voice, and you're using your body language. These are three things which constitutes your communication. Words are important. Without words, you can't be communicating, right? So words are very important and critical. But so is the tonality of the voice. They say that they've done some study on pets, and they say that if you tell your pet, come and sit here quietly, he may not listen. But if you scream and say, come and sit here quietly, they understand from the tone that I am being asked to behave. It happens with human beings as well. That when our parents, our mother, when she changed, you can make out from the tone of the voice of your mother that things are not looking good at the moment, right? So the tonality has a very important role as well.
Sure.
But so does the body language. When you're using your hand movement, when you're talking to the person, they are extremely important. Your facial expressions, the smile on your face when you're negotiating, all of these are critical. So Albert Mehrabia says all these three constitute communication. But I want to ask you now, before we proceed here, Faisal, how much of these three would you like to assign in terms of percentage? In any communication, what percentage of weight would words carry? What percentage, or rather, what importance would you carry to words, to body language, to tone, in terms of, percentage? Let's give it out of 100. How would you divide 100?
I would put words at the bottom. So I'd say like 20% words.
Okay.
I think tonality is quite big.
Yeah.
So I would say I think I would evenly split tonality and body language after that.
40,
So I'd say
40.
40, 20.
All right. Well, we make it absolutely clear to all the audience that we are not saying that words are not important. So
Yeah,
when you
sure.
say words are 20%, you're just saying that in my communication, words alone will only carry 20%
Yeah.
of the communication, effective communication.
Yeah, and well, I suppose the other thing I'm alluding to is that there's many different words you can use to say the same thing, but there's not many different tones, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about the early 80s when we used to watch the news channel.
Yeah.
The newsreader would just come and would keep reading the news that today I would like to inform you that the weather is going to be blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And you know what? The Prime Minister visited the country. No tonality,
Yeah.
no body language. Today, when you switch on the news channel, the journalist is jumping up and down. The
Yeah.
news editor is jumping up and down. So let me come back to the Albert Mehrabia model. He says verbal communication, which is words, they only carry 7%.
7. Okay.
Yeah. 93% is your non-verbal communication.
Wow.
And it's often the non-verbal communication which is often overlooked by people. People think, I know what I have to speak.
So sorry, when you say 93% non-verbal, does that include?
Tonality and body
Tonality,
language.
yes.
And I'm coming to each of
Fine,
them
okay.
individually. He says tonality is 38%. Body language is 55%.
Right. Okay.
55% is body language. And that's why I want to talk to people who do meetings on Zoom and Google Meets and they keep their camera switched off. If you keep your cameras off, your body language, 55% is ruled out immediately. It's out of the game now. So you're only dealing with 45% to convey your communication effectively. It will never be effective at 45%. You've lost 55% when you chose switch off the camera.
I think
All right.
I agree with you so much.
Yeah.
I had a new team member join my team recently, and he was in his probation period, and we were a remote company, and so I met him in person, and he was kind of asking me for advice, and he said, how do you think I'm doing and stuff like that, and I said, can I give you one piece of advice? He goes, yeah. I said, when you're in meetings, turn your camera on. And he didn't understand. And I said to him, I like to use this quote everywhere I go, which is that life is a game of inches, right? Like, there's small things that matter, that make a difference. And it's non-verbal, right? It's like you can't really put your finger on why it's made a difference, but it's made a difference. And I think turning your camera on in Zoom meetings is one of those things.
Yeah.
And I said you'll have a higher chance of passing probation if you just turn your camera on in Zoom. I'm not saying it's going to make a 90% difference, but you will have a higher chance if you have a camera. Why? Because we're a remote company, you become humanized. And so since then, he started turning his camera on.
We build trust.
And hey, let's just say he did pass probation. So
No, you build trust when you switch on the camera or
Of
when you have a
course.
face-to-face conversation.
Yeah.
So we've been having conversations only on text so far.
Yeah.
We're meeting here for the first time.
Yeah.
So there
it's
is
so much different, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You
So-
hated me on text. No, joking.
No, I didn't. But thank you so much for that.
I'm joking. I'm
Yeah.
joking.
So you totally grounded me,
I
didn't
know,
you?
yeah. No, we were
Freshly
saying
grounded.
that we were talking about Zoom, like having a camera on makes a big difference.
93%. Yeah. So 93% non-verbal communication is so critical in negotiation. See, it's not about negotiation. It's any kind of communication.
Any communication, yeah.
You know, body language makes so much of a difference. You see a little child. You've got children at home?
Yes, yeah.
You see a little child when he comes out and he wants to express himself. He will start using his hand movement when he's expressing himself. But what happens is when the spotlight is on us, we tend to get a little too nervous about it. So we hold ourselves very tightly. You know, we'll hold ourselves like this, all right? Or we're going to start clasping our fingers and, you know. When you do all of this, if I am sitting on the other side of the table to negotiate with you, I know this guy is nervous. I know I can use it to my advantage.
Sure.
All right. So if I'm a person who is highly dominating, I know that this is going to be an easy fish for me to catch.
You know, on the topic of children, I think there's so much I learn every single day from my children. My oldest is 4, and body language is one of them. But it's like they haven't been tainted by failure or by embarrassment or by other people's opinions or, you know, financial loss, and therefore they can only be sincere. And so my 4-year-old, when he communicates now, he like when he expresses something, he expresses with his face. So when he asks a question now, he started doing this thing where he'll go, are we not going to go to the petrol station today? Like I sometimes take him to the petrol station after
That's facial expression. That's
It's
also
facial-
body language.
Yeah, his face like he's intrigued by the question. He's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, we don't go on Fridays. Like I say to him, Fridays we don't have time because it's Jummah. I've got to get you home quickly. He's like, we don't go for. And the other thing he does is he uses his hands a lot. He does this.
Yeah.
Even my 3-year-old, he's like, but I don't want to go to sleep yet.
Yeah.
And when I see that, it adds so much color
Yeah.
to what he's doing.
Mashallah.
Yes, you can have half an eye shot.
Yeah. But it's so different to like, I don't want to go sleep yet. To like, oh, I don't want to go sleep. It's like you can
That's
feel
the
the,
tone.
emotion.
He's
Yeah.
playing with the tone of the voice as well.
Yeah. So I think you can learn a lot from children, and
They're natural speakers, isn't it?
they are. And then you mentioned something else after children. What did you say? You said you can learn a lot from children, and
We wanted to speak about how they use their body language, how they use the tonality of their voice. It's a very natural way to, see the body language. And I was telling you that communication is not merely restricted to negotiation. It's in all walks of our life.
Yeah.
So when children are negotiating, they're talking or communicating, they're using their body language. But what we tend to do often is we try to stop them from doing it. So you will find in many educational institutions, they will say, when you're talking, please keep your hands at the back. All right? I know that nowadays the whole medium of education, the style of education has changed. But, back in my time, I was in the late 80s and the early 90s. When you are talking, you have to keep your hands by the side and talk. Or you need to keep your hands at the back while you're talking. Now, what you're doing is you're killing the natural way of expressing. I met this gentleman. I don't know whether you have had a chance to interview him. Our friend from South Africa, Idris Khamisa. Okay. So he's a very good public speaker, mashallah. Idris Khamisa had told me that when your child wants to do painting on the wall or wants to scribble on the wall, never stop him from expressing himself. Because when you do that, you've killed his creativity. He's not going to do that when he grows up. You also know that. But this is his creativity. He sees something and he feels that he should do something over there. That's his creativity. You can paint the wall again if you want.
Yeah.
But don't kill his creativity.
Oh.
But what we would do, we would say, you better not do that. All right? Next time when I see you do this, and what will be the response of the child? He's going to rebel. Because that's how children are, The next time they will go there, they'll again do it. So the communication is an extremely important factor in all walks of our life. It's not only the negotiation table. When we talk of leaders, in fact, as leaders also, the leader has to communicate. He doesn't only have to negotiate. The greatest of leaders are great communicators. You identify, let's start with the best of leaders, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What were the qualities of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He was an excellent communicator.
Yeah.
It was his communication skills. See, one of the quality of a leader is he's supposed to be trustworthy. We read it all in all our leadership books. Who was the man who was given the original title of being trustworthy?
Yeah, the Prophet.
As-Sadiq al-Amin. It was given to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was already, having those qualities of a leader. His art of communication was so good that when Khalid bin Walid, may Allah be pleased with him, when he saw the letter that the Prophet ﷺ had left behind, and in which the Prophet ﷺ had said, a man as intelligent as Khalid, will he still not realize that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad ﷺ is the last and final messenger. When Khalid read these words, and he was an enemy of Islam, he was an enemy of the Prophet ﷺ. During the Hudaybiyah treaty, he was waiting for an opportunity to attack the Prophet ﷺ. But when he read these lines, what was the reaction of Khalid bin Walid? His heart melted. The Prophet ﷺ knew the personality of Khalid and he knew how to approach Khalid. So he said, a man as intelligent as Khalid. He knew that Khalid, son of Walid, coming from the cream of Mecca, has a very good background. So you talk about his intelligence. The Prophet praised his intelligence. But then he asked him, would you still not realize there's no God but Allah? And this is after Hudaybiyah treaty, when Khalid bin Walid went in front of the Kaaba and he said that I, Khalid, the son of Walid, I'm going to Medina to embrace Islam in the hands of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if any one of you want your mothers to be, if you want your children to be orphaned and if you want your wives to be widowed, you can come and stop me. And no one would dare to go and speak to Khalid. So I'm just trying to show you the power of communication, that with the power of communication, you can change hearts. Alhamdulillah.
How does a person fake body language though? Because you mentioned now, if you were negotiating with me and you saw my body language was, weak, you would be like, okay, I can capitalize. But you're not always going to go into every situation confident. So is there a way you can mask confidence through body language, and how do you do that?
See, some people like to mask their body language by holding onto their hands tightly.
Yeah.
But when you do that, you are limiting your body language. I can understand that at the beginning of any program or any lecture, you might be a little rigid. It will take time for you to get a little more comfortable to open up. In a situation like this, use a terminus. For example, this table, this is a terminus, or the way you're sitting right now, that's a terminus. So you've laid your hands to rest, like a bus terminus. So the hands have a terminus.
Okay.
So this is the terminus for the hands. Or if you're standing, you can hold your hands like this. Okay. Some people like to stand like this, with their hands on their hips. Some like to hold their hands like this, as though they're praying, just gently they place their hands, right hand on top of the left. These are called terminus. You can start off from here. So keep your hands light. Don't hold it tightly, or don't clench your fist like this. Because when you do it tightly, then you are limiting your body language. Your mind is not working. Your mind is all the time thinking about the body language. Oh, I need to now start loosening up. Just relax. What happened? Yeah. No, I'll give you an example. If I was to come here, stand with you outside, or let's go to the tea stall here. UAE's got a lot of tea stalls.
Yeah.
Let's go there and just sit and visualize people talking. And you will see every person who's sitting over there and talking, or standing and talking, is using his body language. The moment you put this mic in front of them, they'll freeze. Their body language is going to freeze. So it's the spotlight which puts us into bother. But practice makes both a man and a woman perfect. All right. So the way to become perfect in this is that you practice. All right. Initially, you might be a little rigid, but as you consciously work on yourself, you look at your recordings, see where you're going wrong with your body language. And sometimes you can train yourself in body language as well. Okay. So you know what you're going to say. So you practice. What kind of a body language will be more powerful? Maybe I need to do something like this, like to show authority. So that's also body language. So you can train yourself with this. And it flows naturally after a point of time. Once you get into the hang of it, it's like, are you good with cooking? Any idea?
Yeah, I can cook.
Oh, so you're in my category.
Yeah.
But you see, with women, once they know how to cook, they have the knack of anything. You give them anything, they will know how to come out of it.
Yeah.
So that's a knack. The body language works in the same way. Cooking for men.
I've noticed that because I've noticed that humans in general are creatures of habit, and so you can just by repetition train your body, your voice, or whatever to have a certain effect.
Sure.
When I go and pick up my kids from school, I always stand in the same position.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is just because that's how I stood, and then I did it again, then I did it again, then it's a repetition. Well, if I just changed it, then it'd be a different one. And so I do understand that idea of you've got to put the hours in and practice, because we can form habits.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you see, when we learned public speaking, I learned my public speaking back in 2009.
Okay.
It was a 21-day public speaking course.
Amazing.
8 hours a day, 170 hours. And on the last day of the workshop, not the last day, the penultimate day of the workshop, in Calcutta, you have the Victoria Memorial. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's the look-alike of Taj Mahal. It was made in the honor of Queen Victoria.
Okay.
So in the turn of the century, 19th century. So we were taken to Victoria Memorial by the organizers. And they asked me to just get up and start talking. And I was like, in this park, in front of so many people, they're going up and down. It's a nice winter evening, people have just come out to enjoy the sun. And then I started talking. I mean, I had the courage that, okay, there are 20 of us who are sitting there. So I was trying to draw my confidence and courage from them. But when I started talking, I could now see that a security guard came up. What is happening here? Why are these guys, sitting and talking? Is there some kind of conference going on? Have you got the permission? So on and so forth. It was managed by the organizers very nicely. But for me, that was a game changer. When I stood there and I continued talking, and I could see from the periphery of my eye that people have started moving up and down, they're stopping, they're listening to me, that gave me a big confidence. And then one of the things which my public speaking trainer, Brother Atiq Ahmed from Hyderabad, he had told me, never stop giving talks. From next week onwards, when we are gone from here, make sure that you invite people to come and listen to your talks and keep giving talks. Even if no one turns up, keep a camera in front of you, record yourself and talk. And then go back and check out yourself, your body language. How is it coming along? So it's a matter of practice, The more you're going to practice, your body language will get more and more fluent. Now, I was trained in a particular style of public talk because, the trainer standardizes everything. So we were trained in a standard form. But I remember my mother telling me after a couple of years that, your style of talking reminds me of someone else. I don't want to take names, yeah. So it reminds me of someone else. Don't use that style, be yourself. And that kind of changed me. I said, she's right. Why should I try to be anyone else? I should be myself. I've learned the skills. The way I put it to practice should be my own way, my own unique way. Yeah.
Public speaking is an interesting one because you are never, there's always ways to improve. It kind of reminds me of like, they say like in jiu-jitsu, you never complete it. You're always still learning and other martial arts like that. I think public speaking is very similar. You can always improve, and there's always ways you can learn more skills. My first public speaking competition was in 2008, and I found a picture of it the other day online, and I ended up saving it. I don't know if I have it here to show you. It's hilarious. But I always speak about it, but I never had proof of it or
your journey.
Yeah, and I have this picture of me holding the certificate of it says the finalist, and I've got braces on, and it's just hilarious. I found it. I think I saved it on my computer somewhere, but it's you learn something new every time. I think most recently what I learned is kind of come back to what you said, is that no matter how skilled you are, you will never be upset at over preparing, at preparing enough. You'll never feel like, I've done too much preparation. Preparation is so important. And as I've got older and the more I've done public speaking, the less I've relied on, I know what I'm doing, it's fine. I'll I've started to get to the point where I've I really try and prepare for my talks. And it started when I did our first live. We used to do live events quite regularly, 2 times a year at Freshly Grounded, and then we started this concept called a house show. And the house show, the idea of the house shows were that they were smaller versions of our big live events. The big live events would be 400 to 2,000 people, and we came up with this concept. We're why don't we do more regular live shows? That's just 100 people. It's like a small little auditorium. And we call it a house show. And so for the first house show, I was more nervous for the house show than I was for the big 2,000 people show for some reason. I think it's because it's more intimate, and also the whole thing was just going to be me. And so I wrote. That was the first time I wrote word for word a script for a show. And then the day of the show, I booked a hotel. I locked myself in that room, and I just repeated it and
memorized it.
I just memorized. Yeah, and it's the first time I did that, and I went in with so much confidence.
Yeah.
And normally I don't have that confidence, and I hadn't experienced that level of confidence because I always thought, I'll just rely on my skills. I've been public speaking since 2008. But preparation makes such a big difference.
Yeah. One of the basics that we learned when we started public speaking was make sure that you memorize your speech in your initial years. Initial years.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it throughout.
Yes.
Because after a point of time, once you get comfortable on the stage, you memorize, because there are chances that I'm going to get overwhelmed. If I get overwhelmed, I may forget things.
Sure.
So therefore, it is extremely important that you memorize your speech in your initial years. But after a point of time, you should become smart.
Yes.
You should know that I can jot down notes. I should be familiar with some important points which I need to memorize. But I should know the flow, the structure. It should be there at the back of your mind. All right. So if it's there in your mind, you know it's going to come. At times, you may go blank. What happens if you go blank? You don't stop talking. You keep talking. You stretch an argument. You stretch a point that you're trying to make so that the message rings. And sooner or later, you will get the point back. If you don't, skip that and move on to the next one. You do it confidently.
Yeah, nobody will know.
Nobody will know about
Yeah.
it. So these skills like negotiation, public speaking, I mean, these are life skills.
Yeah.
You need to keep learning.
Sorry to interrupt. I need to forgive me. I need to leave now for negotiation.
Okay.
Inshallah.
We need to know the result of your negotiation.
Yeah, he's actually going to sell a car right now.
Is that the reason why he was
Yeah.
waiting for this? He wanted to get all the skills.
It was just.
It was a perfect.
All the best. Barakallah feek.
It's fine. We're rounding up now. That was a perfect thing for him to listen to. No, I agree. It's surprising that people aren't more eager to learn, and even us, like me, more eager to learn these kind of skills, because you use them honestly, like throughout your life. Public speaking, you're constantly using it, regardless of whether you're going to be on the stage or not. Negotiation, you're always using it. Leadership, everybody in some capacity is a leader, right?
Absolutely.
You're a leader in your house, or you're a leader with if you're an older
Family.
sibling, your family. So you don't have to necessarily be like a business leader to lead. So yeah, I feel like we could talk forever on some of these concepts, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface, but I'm conscious of time, so I'll end it here. But Brother Mansoor, it's been lovely to have you on.
Same
and
here,
to learn
Faisal. Barakallah feek.
about
Thank
these
you for having me.
incredible skills. And
Thank you for having me as well.
it's
Thank you.
been an absolute
Barakallah
pleasure.
feek.
Inshallah, it'd be lovely to have you on again.
Inshallah.
sometime. Thank you very
Inshallah.
much. Take
Take
care.
care.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.